No, absolutely. And I think it's a ton of resources and a ton of experience that you have in the space, right? And I remember we were doing a session or a survey for, band members as well as investors and their appetite in the sector, right? Can you give us some insights on, how this, space or sector, particular sector is appetitable for angels, or that has, gone through your experience?
Yeah, the sector, the fit between angel investors in this sector. It's always scary, because when I look at the, we all look at as Silicon Valley and look at our ecosystems. Silicon Valley came first by a long shot. So what you have is exits, recycling of capital, more exits, and maybe so many other cultural linkages that are built. Now, our ecosystems, generally startups are newer. So 15 years ago, when people started investing in general startups here, it was on a lark. That maybe it should turn out well. It was not data based, obviously, because it was just starting off here in South Asia. Same thing in clean tech. I mean, we are taking a bet. What we're taking a bet is that the dynamics are driving the demand for clean tech solutions, especially the B2B industry side, have a lot of similarities here in South Asia. Now, that's still not enough for angel investors. Okay, similarities you don't take risks on. So one thing that we need is other factors coming in. We need some more successes. We need some more follow-on investments, seeing examples on the ground. And that's sort of where I think one of the missing links. When we do our research and look around angels across the subcontinent, one of the things is, yes, there is interest, but is it worth it? And we have, as an angel investor, we have many options. Why am I taking the lead? Why can't I stick to fintech, edutech, which are also exciting areas, or consumer internet? There could be, depending on which country, plenty of growth there. Why clean tech? And I think one thing, there are two things that are starting to converge. Is the smaller point is the follow-on investment is increasingly in there, which gives signals and comfort. Okay, that's just follow. Maybe everyone is wrong, but that's at least one part of the puzzle done. The more exciting thing, and this is sort of what we are starting to see in India, is that investing in ecosystems is oftentimes similar to investing in the stock market. If you may have picked the right winner in an industry, but if you don't get your timing right on a surge, I used to be a trader and on Wall Street myself, it doesn't matter. So oftentimes you may, it's like getting into e-commerce today in India. Much better bet 10, 15 years ago, and in terms of the risks you take versus the amount of entry barriers that are put up by players in the market. So there is definitely a bet to say. I do believe it's the same kind of bet people are already making, even though the sector may be different. Is that with everything happening, that there could be, for those who are comfortable with the sector, maybe it does require more understanding of the sector, understanding of the demand owners, like the corporates, what's driving them, etc. But the opportunities for returns could be higher in a nascent and growing sector, generically speaking, than maybe more mature sectors. And this is sort of what we are trying to help kind of help angel groups as the ecosystem start to get to that stage where, yes, these opportunities are coming in clean tech, but now how to take those first steps. Yeah.
Absolutely, and might have been really tough, right? And what was your experience behind, getting these group involved, especially in climate space? And what's the mindset of these angels, right? Or the investors that you're working with? How do you convince them to take active look into the clean tech space or the climate tech space?
Right, that's a good question. In fact, there is what would be an ideal path and what's perhaps happening on the ground. Sometimes it's not the same thing. Now, when I talk to some large angel networks in India in particular, something shocks me. I had this conversation recently last year. The number one focus of one of the large angel networks in India, one of the large top three, number one focus of their members is sustainability, not top interest. Yes, it's a kind of a number one focus, and their own funding is reflecting the same. This is shocking. Now, when you go and talk to a lot of members individually, one thing we see is that there's only a few leading investors who have experience in clean tech, maybe because they come from that industry that uses that technology or sees the demand. And this is generally true, of course, of angel investing. It's not something unique to clean tech. But what I do see is that there are many angels who understand this dynamic, that to make money there is an element of risk in timing. It's an old Wall Street joke, is that if your waiter is giving you a stock tip, sell it. Right, so it's or when you read something, a business opportunity in the Financial Times, it's not an opportunity, it's something else. So what I do see is that the number of people with experience in some industries starting to play leading roles in being in those syndications, that's really helping drive. There's still a lot of skepticism amongst angels for this sector, and I think part of that is maybe because their focus is on other areas. So this is not a indication about it. It's not analysis of a sector. It's just oftentimes angels have different backgrounds and limited time and scope. That's okay as well. I think when I look under the hood in India, and this is my estimate, and this is from things that are hard to sometimes see, my estimate, at least in terms of incubators and accelerators, not necessarily developed at home, 1 out of every 7 startups is a clean tech startup in India, and this is growing fast. So, is it inconceivable for those coming out of incubators and accelerators, which is such that 1 out of every 4 being clean tech? It's possible, because as our startup ecosystem shifts to more B2B, which is a shift we've seen in the last few years. Oftentimes, we're talking about resource efficiency, which often saves money on the ground. When I say clean tech, sometimes the word is confused with climate change, which has connotations of CSR or demand or a Paris Agreement, or reducing CO2 emissions or carbon removal technologies. When people look at clean tech, I had a call with an investor last month, and I was just asking him about his history. He said, we just didn't realize it's a big family here in India, that in the last few years, a lot of our startup investments were in clean tech. It was not planned. There was no impact goal. There's no something. They're very cutthroat business family that looks for returns. It just happens that a lot of the B2B solutions are very positive for industry and the bottom line, and this dynamic perhaps is where a lot of the changes that are also happening in clean tech, in this wider definition, is happening in of course the energy space, as the shift to EVs. Nobody's shifting to EVs because Paris Agreement, right? It's the growth in EVs. There's savings for sure in certain sectors, not all our segments in India in transport, but certain sectors for electric vehicles as well, and of course the circular economy side as well.
The entire space is still very early in terms of the kind of companies that are coming through, and we're observing from the region, right? Is there any similarities of kind of solutions that you've seen or observed in the market? What's been the standout? Who's doing well? If you can just give a really high level overview on it.
Between India and Bangladesh, you mean? Is that similarities, or between South Asia and the rest of the world?
South Asia versus the Southeast Asian components or countries.
Right. I mean, I think one thing that's interesting is that in clean tech generally, a lot of the entrepreneurs either are first-time entrepreneurs or come from some clean tech background. Now we're starting to see a little more infusion of startup experienced people in other sectors getting into clean tech, and that's a very positive development as well, especially as the ecosystems evolve. It brings in more talent, and nothing does beat experience. The fundamental battle, I don't know if I'm not allowed to say this, it's the battle we have in India with so much money going to student entrepreneurs, which I don't know, maybe it's good for sure, but I think a lot of experienced entrepreneurs can do much more with that same amount of money. That's what I mean by that only. So that's something very positive happening in Bangladesh. It's India plays a different role than almost everyone in has a different stage than most other countries in South or Southeast Asia and Africa generally in the startup ecosystem, but also in clean tech. So I think we're still 2-3 years behind picking a country behind India in terms of this startup development. But I see, for example, a lot of the quality starting to improve. Like whenever you're solving things like I saw a startup in our program, Climate Launchpad Bangladesh, in battery swapping. There's no difference between that startup and a good battery swapping startup here in India. Good engineers, there's a problem, to be solved. Okay. I think maybe we do see, for example, a little more startups in R&D coming out of India. Maybe that does take a little more time. Maybe it's a funding issue. For example, one of our startups was a 5-year PhD project from IIT Chennai and the University of Manchester on micro fuel cells to solve the the wastewater coming from textile dyeing units. That's a very positive trend, which we should all encourage because all of us have technical institutes that do applied engineering, applied science, because we're solving a lot of clean tech or agricultural problems that use clean tech. This is a hard gap. When I do training like in Europe as well, I see the Swiss startups, 90% are PhDs coming out into something. It comes from a lot of years of some technical research. That's great for Switzerland in particular, but we have that potential here. It's not coming out in our ecosystem yet, but this could be, as we see over the years, more and more of this come out. A lot of people in technical institutes or research institutes, CSIR, here in India, are actually calling us and telling us about their innovation instead of the old licensing deals that they used to do with industry, which helped nobody. They're exploring the startup model, which is something, at least from a future point of view, to be encouraged across the sector.
You're eventually expecting cross-border investments, right? So what is the game plan there? What is the standard practice that you want to set out for these investors to take part in deal flows outside their jurisdiction or outside their country?
Yeah, so you're asking, like, for example, let's say there's a fund in Dubai. How are we helping them coming to, say, Bangladesh?
Exactly.
Right. I mean, from a technical point of view, we can't, because there's too many countries and combinations. 10 countries, that could be, what is that, 10 times 9, 90 combinations. What we can do is, if, for example, we do have a great VC you guys can check out called Venture Soup, which is just finished a test in climate tech investing. Now raising, I think they're raising a $25 million, $50 million fund, half for clean tech, including for Bangladesh as one of their countries. So we make a good assumption that follow-on VCs will have figured out themselves how to get money into Bangladesh from wherever they are. We don't get involved in those things. I know sometimes this is complicated, even from India to go to Bangladesh. We have a problem with our AIF, Alternative Investment Fund structure. It's a strange one because it's something new that's coming out on practice. It's easier for our AIFs to go outside of South Asia. So these are things that have to be realistic. So in fact, in our own fund, we're designing emerging South Asia, including Bangladesh, to come from Singapore, not from India. But there's a little bit more tied to the investor or funding source side to solve the money flow. I think that's our goal, is to figure out who should be in the room on a specific deal, as well as the clean tech education support that we can provide.